Welcome all you handsome folks to the Rotary meeting of November 8th, 2024. I am Steve Hammers and I'm fortunate enough to be your president. Thank you. Wow. Y'all make me feel so good. We're going to have the invocation by Laura Troop and the pledge and forward test by Jack Benner. Laura.
Today, I brought a prayer that I wrote last year for Rotary that I feel like is very appropriate. But I also want to mention today that Zach has asked for prayers for his family and for his cousin, who is her name is Ashley, who right now is deciding what to do with her child in utero, who has some pretty major complications. And so we just pray for discernment and clarity and an infusion of hope in a really hopeless situation. So if you will pray boldly for them, I would appreciate that. Creator God, forgive our foolish ways. Help us find our right minds and stop worrying about things that don't matter. Restore our reverence for you by renewing our commitment to serving one another and this community. Open our eyes to see the needs around us and give us resolve to venture closer to the margins so we are aware of the needs of those who don't look like us, act like us, hurt like us, or live like us. Prevent us from being easily offended. Pry open our tight fists to be more generous, more helpful, and more loving. Allow us to always look for your image in each other. Fill our hearts with joy for those among us who are celebrating, and increase our sympathy and compassion to those who are grieving. Return to us the friends who we are missing today, and send us out of this place with your peace. In the name of Jesus, amen.
Please join me in the pledge to our nation's flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Now, please join me for the four-way test. The things we think, say, and do. First, second, third, and fourth.
Would be beneficial to all concerned.
Certainly hope so.
All right, our wonderful secretary, Jennifer Wayne, is gonna, we don't have any guests? No Rotarians? Well, we'll introduce our speaker here in a second. So no guests today, okay. We're gonna do Happy Bucks. Brian, our chief, is gonna do Happy Bucks today.
I've spoken at the Exchange Club a couple times and they do something similar. They called it brag and complain. Maybe we should do that and we'll make a little more money that way. But who's happy today?
Today is a very special day, at least come this Sunday. I put $2 in. One reason, and that's because my best friend from the time I was a kid, and I bet on the World Series and I won. So, and it was a $10 bet, and he sent me 5 $2 bills. And part 2 of this is today is the 8th, but Sunday is the 10th, and I'm wearing a shirt. Sunday, November 10th, 1776, the Marine Corps birthday. Hoorah!
Marine Corps birthday today. That's awesome. Thank you, George.
Oh, I don't need to hold that, right? What I'm doing. Yeah. No, not really. So I'm involved at Woodland Middle School, and we're having a Veterans Day program on Monday. Martin Plumley has been gracious enough to take care of, most people here know Martin, has taken care of the ceremony itself. And one of the things that warms my heart, he has invited to be the Woodland guest speaker, Jennifer Shepard's son, Stephen. So he's flying in from Colorado this weekend to come and speak. And he's a Woodland graduate as well as a Ravenwood graduate. So I think it's going to be so cool for the kids to see that. And I want you to tell them his rank and all that stuff because I can't remember.
Oh, he is a cadet first class, which is a senior. They call it a firstie, and he's about to graduate and he's going into cybersecurity. So, and we're hoping the snowstorm does not cause problems.
Yeah, if he doesn't get here by Monday, what's anybody in this room doing? Yeah, he'll get here. But yeah, it's so cool, I think, for the kids. So I just wanted to say thank you, Jennifer, and special thanks to Stephen.
Did anybody else not get water? We ran out of water. I didn't know that. You didn't? Okay, good. Thank you.
You didn't put $1 in. I'll cover you. Who else today? Who else happy this morning? Oh, come on. Nobody wants to say anything.
I know we
Anybody?
got some happy people in here.
All right.
Dig it out in a second. I only have one arm. I'll dig out my dollar in a second. We ate red sauce and I didn't spill it. I'm really, really pleased I didn't spill it.
It doesn't take much. I'm going to pick some happy people in a minute.
Yeah, there's 10. Happy going up to Knoxville this weekend to see the Vols play for my first time this year. So hopefully they'll be able to pull it out. And then hopefully going to Dollywood if the rain falls or doesn't fall. So
Is
look
that
forward- good
Georgia?
weekend.
Is that Georgia? Oh,
A lot of happy people at table one.
I'm happy because we just got back from a wonderful 2-month RV trip around Canada, and Paul and I did, and the US, and we came back and there was no casualties.
how many miles did you drive? Whoa. You could have drove to London.
Anybody else?
Nothing else? All right. Thank you, Brian. We're gonna start our foundation drive. Jennifer is gonna take notes. So Jennifer, I believe today what we're asking for is a number, not the dollar amount, but the number of participants. So last week, go ahead. I'll let you do it.
Four. Does that make sense? So we're going to add the numbers together with the goal at the end being every table, everybody, we're at 100%.
So each week that you write down on your sheets, the table captain, if you only got one or two on this week's row, that's what you're going to say. 2 people contributed.
All right.
All right.
Are we
Table one.
ready? All right, we'll roll with it. 6. Yeah, the total. Yep. Table 2. Thanks.
Banks, you got anything?
How many at the table 2?
Have contributed this week.
Okay, so we're still at 1. All right, table 3. Excellent. Table 4. Table 5. Table 6. Excellent. Table 7. All right, we have a timeout over here. Okay, excellent. We'll take it. Number 8, table 8. Total of 4. Table 9. 3 new. And then table 10. Excellent. I'll tally that up in a minute. Just to kind of give you an update from last week, we raised over $20,000 last week, first week, so it's really good. We are at 30% of our total goal. So excellent. Good job, guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate that. Don't forget the announcements. If listen, we'll put them back up there. Banks, do you have everything you need for the no, actually, Sorry, you're later. There is a district conference tonight. I'm not sure who signed up, but it's at 6 p.m. at the Cool Springs Marriott, the district. Don't forget Owls Hill Sanctuary. Did you get anybody to sign up? Okay. You all good there? Okay. If anybody wants to help out there, make sure you get the Christmas holiday party on your schedule for the 5th of December. Definitely like to see everybody there. And we got the Waverly food distribution coming up December 7th. So that is it for that. We're going to go ahead and jump in since we didn't have any guests. We're a little ahead of schedule. So we're going to jump in and Ray Little is going to introduce our speaker for today.
Before I get started with the introduction, since our club is truly about service, I would like all those in this room who are veterans to please stand and let us recognize you for your service. Thank you. I knew we had quite a few. Since this country was settled in the 150 years till its founding as a nation, the musket and the plow, the citizen soldier, has always been critical to its forming and its preservation. Somewhat unique in history, because generally cultures had what would be called a warrior class. But our nation, being blessed by God with freedoms and independence, has been wise in the fact that we still promote the citizen soldier. And I tell you that because Colonel Freeman, who will speak in just a moment, epitomizes that. And as I read his biography, you'll see. But thought I would give just a couple of statements that kind of stood out to me as I looked into this. And we'll also have at the city of Brentwood, as our meeting starts on Monday night, a celebration of our veterans in our community. So any of y'all who want to attend, please do. At the core, the American citizen soldier knew the difference between right and wrong, and they didn't want to live in a world in which wrong prevailed. So they fought and won, and we, all of us living and yet to be born, must be forever profoundly grateful. Stephen Ambrose. Veterans know better than anyone else the price of freedom, for they've suffered the scars of war. We can offer them no better tribute than to protect what they have won for us. President Ronald Reagan. Tom Freeman is a veteran of the U.S. Air Force, California National and State Guard. He enlisted during the Iranian hostage crisis. He served as a survival and escape and evasion instructor, parachutist, honor guard member, recruiter, photo intelligence, interpreter, general's aide, and was a military aide to former Governor Davis and Schwarzenegger, and was vice of the Memorial Honors Detail at the National Cemetery. In fact, this morning he's been placing flags on the graves of veterans. At Riverside, he also served on the state's Military Department Strategic Planning Council. He served honorably between 1979 until retirement in 2007. He was elected to 3 terms on the National Guard Association of his state. He is the co-founder of Honor Our Veterans, a privately funded military service organization formed 3 years ago in Brentwood. They have had success in improving veterans' burial services at 5 state veterans cemeteries, co-hosting the city of Brentwood's first official Memorial Day celebration, working to expand capacity at our state veterans cemeteries, along with annually posting flags at State Veterans Cemetery at Nashville for Memorial Day. They have also ensured the state honored its Vietnam veterans upon the 50th anniversary of that war. Now, this part of his biography to me was as important as the military. Tom has worked for Waste Management and served at West Group Vice President and CG USA as its Vice Chairman, Executive Vice President and Chief Administrative Officer. CG USA is a fossil fuel retailer, development firm, and operates Del Taco, Burger King, Dairy Queen, Dunkin' Donuts, Subway, and Denny's franchises in California. Tom served as the executive officer of the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, emergency manager with the CAL FIRE Riverside County Fire Department, military and defense commissioner, commissioner of foreign trade, and a chief of staff for the 4th District in his 25 years of service with the nation's 9th largest county of 2.5 million residents and 7,200 square miles. Among his many appointments, Tom has served as a member of the White House Rural Economic Development Force, vice chair of the National Association of Counties Task Force on International Trade, International Airport Commissioner, Tribal Gaming Regulator, 8th District Congressional appointee to the Governor of Military Council, member of the Public Safety Committee for 9 cities, chairman of the Joint Powers Authority for Tourism in the Greater Palm Springs region. Tom is a frequent guest contributor to the USA Today's Tennessean on armed forces and veteran issues. He is the recipient of numerous military, civic, and government awards. Amongst them are the Thomas Jefferson Award for Philanthropy and Community Service and the Gerald R. Ford Award for Distinguished Service. Tom and his wife, Dr. Brenda Salas Freeman, reside in Brentwood, Tennessee with their 3 children. They are members of Brentwood Baptist Church. Tom's a deacon and Brenda works in the children's ministry. So I'd like for you to welcome someone who, as all of our citizen shoulders do, serve their God, their family, their city, their state, and their nation, a citizen soldier and a veteran advocate, Colonel Tom Freeman.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the lengthy and warm welcome. I guess you guys are wondering if I can even keep a job. The answer to that was no. Skipped around quite a bit in my career, but I'm pleased that I got to serve in our armed forces for that 28 years, first as an enlisted man and then later as an officer. So I have a great affection for the military and all our veterans and all that are currently serving. And Ray brought up something in that bio talking really about what's going on in veteran services in Tennessee and across the country. And this isn't a sexy thing, but it is something that needs to be addressed. Every one of the men and those women that serve, and thank you all that stood during the introduction period and stood up and were recognized for your service. When you serve, you earn burial rights. We have a shortage for burial spaces in our cemeteries, not only in the state of Tennessee, but also across the country. A friend of mine came to me and said, "Hey, you couldn't keep a job. I saw you were National Defense Commissioner." I said, "Oh, yeah, I was." He said, "Well, I called the National Cemetery here in Nashville where I want to be buried, and they told me I couldn't be buried there." And I said, "Oh, well, let me look into it." This is how we started Honor Our Veterans. And really, it's about honoring the nation's word to the veterans and their families who earned burial at a national or state veteran cemetery. So if you're in Nashville, you know, we have a beautiful federal cemetery. I'm pleased to tell you it is full. That is because when it was created around the Civil War, no one at that time believed it was going to be full. Back at that time, when President Lincoln was creating the cemetery system, you had to be a combat veteran to be buried in a national cemetery. And as we move forward, some of the elected leaders decided, well, this should be for any veteran and any family member. So that created a need for more space. We don't have that space. That beautiful cemetery, which is hallowed ground to all that served, is full. The only thing that can be utilized there is what we call columbariums. Columbariums are where urns go. Columbariums are now becoming the new rage because the price, and I hope no one in here is a funeral director in the business, but the price for funerals, as many know, is gone. Oh, there is one. Have gone up a little bit. Well, thank you for your service. As you can see, I'm a little bit overweight from the day I could wear a uniform. So I have a friend that's a funeral director, and I was saying, man, I'm going to have to buy a new uniform. He says, "No, Tom, don't worry. I'm just gonna rip it open down the back. Nobody will ever know. And I said, yeah, make it fit. He said, yeah, I'll save you $500. So thank you. Working with funeral directors is an essential part of what you do at the National Cemetery or state cemeteries. They're a great resource, not only to us, but families. They bring a lot of comfort. That's a very stressful time. And most people don't even know what their benefits are, even though they've been in the military. And it's the funeral directors most of the time that have that contact that tell them what their benefits are, which brings us to the point of there's not enough space again. So what we've been doing is we formed a group. We've been working with someone you all know, Jack Johnson. Jack has been amazing to help us. We've also worked with Tommy Baker. If you don't know Tommy Baker, if anybody's a former member of the Guard here, Tommy was a Major General in the Guard. There were some issues here in Tennessee with the Veteran Services Department. Tommy was sent there to correct that, and he's been a super ally to help us make improvements in veterans programs, not just fun things like burials, but all the benefit programs. So now we have asked the federal government to grant us $7 million to build a 6-state cemetery. It indirectly benefits us, but that'll be in the east side of Tennessee because that's where the growth is. Some nice people stepped up and gave 250 acres to this program for free. And you all know, with the growth of Tennessee, 250 acres is worth a lot of money, but they felt that they could do this. And before that land can be received by the state, the VA, the Veterans Administration in Washington, has to prove it because they want it close to a freeway and an off-ramp. They want water, sewer, all these things. So you have to get the right donor that just happens to have property that's very valuable because it sits by an off-ramp, has water and sewer. That donor remains anonymous, but now the land's in place. So the state last year submitted a grant. $7 million would build the facility. Unfortunately, we came up in the ranking system, nationwide, we came up about number 15. 15 means we were 5 short of getting the 7 million, but we'll inch up through the process. And I don't want to get into the minutia how that stuff works, but it's very competitive. All the other states, you have 50 states trying to get this money to either improve, expand, or build new facilities. When you look at our immediate needs, we're fine. We've got enough space between the 5 Tennessee cemeteries and the 5 federal cemeteries to accommodate most of the folks. All the folks that want to be cremated and placed in that beautiful urn that you sell, they can easily make it. It's the casketed burials, the folks that don't want to be cremated. That's where our challenge lies. So that's one of the things we're working on. When we were out at the cemetery, and if you've been there at the State Veterans Cemetery, we also noticed something that was not in keeping with the traditions of the way we were laid to rest. And it was very simple. Because of a lack of resources and not a lack of initiative or anything that they were intentionally doing wrong, as the casket was removed from the hearse, it was placed in a dump truck. The dump truck then took the casket to the gravesite. The gravesite was prepared, casket and body interned, sealed. 30 minutes later, the family could come down and witness this process. That is not the way it's done nationwide at federal cemeteries. Families want to be there when the casket and remains are lowered. I think you could attest to that it's kind of a rub. So again, I took some video, went in to see Jack Johnson, showed him this video. He said, "What is that?" "That looks like a dump truck." And "Where is that?" And I said, "Well, that's at your state veteran cemetery. And that is a John Deere dump truck." "And who's driving that?" I said, "Well, those are inmates," which, we don't like that. And I don't think there's nothing wrong with inmate labor. That's a good way to lower the cost of doing business. But there is an honor process that we follow in the armed forces that assures those of you that have served receive a dignified burial. Jack Johnson said, well, what do we do to fix this? And I said, we need casket haulers. He said, well, how much does that cost? And I said, well, they're $50,000 a piece. And he said, well, we got 5 cemeteries. You need $350,000. I'll get it for you. And today I was looking at all 5 brand new casket haulers as they arrived at the cemetery, which is really something that I know that those of you that aren't veterans are probably concerned about once you learn about it. But those veterans, they don't need to be placed or have their remains placed in a dump truck. And they don't need to be helped into their final resting place by inmates. So all that has been fixed quietly. We weren't complaining that it was terrible. We didn't contact the media. We didn't scream and raise hell about it. All we said was, sir, could you help us? He said, sure. There are other things that are coming down the pipeline that I think are important. Is there any veteran in here that is military disabled? Okay. Well, some of us are. I think you mentioned that I was a jump instructor, parachute instructor. I was an instructor when I was skinny, and I kind of had what they call a hard landing, or better known in our business as a lawn dart. And you might remember those lawn darts, how they stuck in the grass. Well, that was me. And so I got a little bit of a back problem. And once you receive 100% disability from the VA, you're entitled to a property tax deduction. Every state has it. They're all different. Tennessee's is capped at $175,000, which is very generous, which means you get roughly $800 back on your property taxes. Now, there's elected officials here. There's parents of elected officials. There's people who probably served in government. That cap was in place in 1985, which was awesome. That if you're 100% disabled, you could write off your property taxes. That is a benefit. Well, the average Williamson County property is valued at about $350. As we see more people like me move here, it drives property values up, which is a good thing. But then your assessed value on your property has gone way up. So what we'll be asking for in this session, as it starts in January, we'll be asking the state legislature to incrementally move that cap up till we hit 350. One of the challenges for counties and cities is always where their revenue comes from. And they zealously guard that revenue source, whether it's your property taxes, sales taxes, taxes sold when cars are sold, all that fun stuff that helps them provide police, firefighters, and all the other services. That's why we're asking for an incremental increase up to 350 and let it sit there for a long time, because there are many veterans, and I am not 100% disabled, but the 100% disabled veterans have earned that. And I think it's only appropriate and fair that they be able to increase that number to whatever the assessed value is of property here. And it seems to be 350. That would then have statewide implications. Some of the other counties here aren't quite at that level of assessed value, but still the cap would be about 350. Another thing that we've asked for, if you all followed the vaccine requirement. Now, my time where I was actually doing something besides carrying a general's briefcase or what have you was in the Gulf War. And during the Gulf War, we were required to take an anthrax shot. A lot of people didn't want to take that shot, but we all took it because when we said we weren't going to take it, they said, you don't have a choice. There was no offer of a discharge or anything like that. You just took it. Today, as you fast forward, during the COVID period, we had people who refused to take the shot. So what happened? 8,500 men and women were separated. A few of those separations were given an honorable discharge. Others were awarded a general discharge. That places limits on your benefits that you likely earn. And again, we don't think that's appropriate. They served. There's two things we've asked for the state to ask our federal legislators formally to ask the Defense Department and the incoming administration to reverse those discharges and upgrade them to honorable. We think that's right. Now, there might be some people out here that serve that don't agree with that, and I respect that. But I think if they stood up in the Marine Corps, the Army, the Navy, the Coast Guard, Air Force, Space Force, and they said, I want to serve, but I don't want to get vaccinated. I respect that. They were discharged. It was not pretty. We think that that should be reversed. Now, the incoming president, Donald Trump, has already indicated when he spoke, I'm still a member of the National Guard Association. He came to us and he wanted our endorsement, which he did receive. He promised us several things, and he has delivered previously on those promises he made to us. But this promise, one of those is those 8,500 discharges. He plans to reverse them. Now, not every one of those discharges can be reversed. There might be some bad conduct issues or something in there, but to be able to gain those people back in the system, the Guard and Reserve, which represent half of your strength or the number of people that can go to war, we recruit those folks that separate from active duty. Some of them, like me, when I got off active duty, we go right into the Guard. We don't even have a day's break in service. Other people wait 5 or 10 years, and as long as they're thin and healthy and can pass a physical exam, we'll gain them into the system. But for us, we see it as there was a wrong. We'd like to right the wrong, but selfishly, we want to recruit those men and women into the Guard or Reserve, or even back on active duty if they want to. And the Marine Corps, I know Mr. Andrews here is Marine, and there was another Marine back there. Thank you, sir, for your service. Marines were particularly hard on those veterans who decided not to take the shot. And I respect that. I served with Marines. I went to Marine Corps training for jump school. That's a tough bunch, and they're the nation's best. But they don't like non-commissioned officers who they see as leaders, warrant officers, refusing to take a shot. So they were separated with a general discharge. So this will overturn it. Yes, sir. We haven't got that far, but as you know, I believe you said you served 3 years. If we were to gain you into the system as a Marine Reserve or Army Guard reservist, you would start out as let's say you were an E4 with 3 years of service. So the answer to that is yes, that's how we treat you. But the gap time in there, no. Unless they happen to have been discharged and separated into the inactive reserve, there would be no additional time granted. That's what we're working on right now. And other things we're doing to elevate the awareness of this problem is meeting with city commissioners, county commissioners. This is made easy because Tennessee is a very patriotic state. And when you bring something to the elected officials' attention, out of their good hearts, they're just saying, oh yeah, we should be doing that. We're not asking for any money here. We're not asking for that when we say, would you please recognize the veterans in Brentwood with a Veterans Day remembrance or a Memorial Day remembrance? And city commissioners have stood up and done that. So this Monday at 7 p.m., as Ray indicated, we will have a brief ceremony. These ceremonies last 20 minutes. Our guest speaker, are there any naval members in here? I believe I saw somebody with his wings of gold. Wow, the Navy is the big contingent. Thank you for your service. We have a Navy Lieutenant Commander, Howard Rodriguez, who served in the Navy, dual qualified aviator, both fifth wing and the Navy Rotary Wing. He was very proud to be assigned to the Enterprise, which he told me was the Navy's first nuclear carrier, with not 1, not 2, but not 3, but 5 nuclear reactors. I see we have an alumni or somebody knows his naval history, both of you. Howard had an interesting career. He went to the Naval Academy. He did 2 years there. And I've learned as I worked for a Naval Academy, not graduate, but he went from 71 and he left as a sophomore. He didn't like it. He went to college over here at MTSU and he still wanted to serve. And he joined the Navy, went to flight school where all good Navy people do in Pensacola, and had a wonderful 20-year career. And he is just a super guy, very involved in the community, not just here, but in Kentucky, where he's a board member of the Shriner Hospital. And so he does some good work. He's going to be the guest speaker. One of the things that has happened over the last 25 years, maybe 30, is we finally started in the armed forces having positions that recognize the spouses and family members' contributions. Every single unit has a family support officer. Most of them do. That person is usually a civilian, sometimes a spouse, but they're there to help when we deploy. And I would say that Jordan, on Ray's behalf, contacted me. She's a member here, and she's an Army spouse. Her husband serves with the 101st Airborne, and he's deployed to the Middle East. Early this week, 1,000 of your Tennessee Army National Guard soldiers deployed to the Middle East. Quietly, no one heard that. We were over recognizing Maria Lee for all she's done to recognize, participate, and help soldiers and airmen of the Tennessee Guard and their spouses. And the adjutant general, who's it's kind of unique. We guard as citizen soldiers, we have jobs, and then we're in the Guard. It might be a general, it might be a corporal. Whatever we are, we have real jobs. He was a school director in West Tennessee for his entire career. What we call in the Guard a weekender. When you hear the term weekend warrior, that's what a lot of people call us. That's changed a lot in the last 20 years because the big Army and the Air Force can't go to war without the Guard. They cannot win, they can't fly, they can't fight successfully without the contribution of the Guard. That doesn't apply to the United States Marine Corps and Navy. They rely on Guard partnerships, and they train and fight with National Guard soldiers and airmen, but they do not have a dual-hatted state mission. Some states actually have a Navy that's part of the Guard. It goes back, as Ray indicated, to the citizen soldier era back in Massachusetts. New York has one of the largest naval fleets of National Guard personnel. I didn't know that when I joined from active duty. I thought, who are these guys? Here, oh, they have a boat? Oh, no, they got a ship. I said, oh, okay. How does that work? And they said, well, there's a lot of these guys are former Navy personnel, and they're volunteers, and they do not get paid. They get paid when they're activated, but they're not paid to come to drill. So there's a lot of citizen soldiers out there and sailors and airmen doing great things without compensation. That's what the state Guard is. So if you can't get enough of military service when you're old, overweight, and retired, or if you still look good in your uniform, you can do what I did. You can join the state Guard and do stuff. That's usually like emergency management things and helping the National Guard with their deployments here in the state, which this week also happened because Mrs. Lee wanted to have a deployment to help the people in East Tennessee, and 200 of your state Guard members went to help out. So I think the Guard, the active duty forces, and America are doing great things. And today, I think most of you have probably seen this. We have a bit of a recruiting challenge. Some call it a crisis. I think that is about to wind down. I think the new administration will come in and relieve us of some of the requirements called DEI, where academy cadets or midshipmen were not allowed to even write a letter home that referred to parents as mom and dad. I note that there was an academy mom here I think she's right there. That's a little over the top, to me, that we can't call our parents mom and dad, but we're tasked with war fighting, defending this country, and we have to put up with, I'll call it stuff. There's other words for it, but I'm in the public, so, and I'm a deacon, so I guess I can't use the language that we would in the military, but I will tell you that there's a high level of frustration. It's not the mission creep that bothers today's soldier, Marine, airman, members of the Coast Guard, and the new Space Force. It's not that. It's what we would refer to in polite terms as nonsense imposed upon us by leadership, if you can call it that, that wants to make us politically correct. We're spending more money on political correctness training than we are on operational training, which we rely on. Our Navy has shrunk to the smallest size it's been in decades. That's a sad thing. So we have a lot to catch up on. We have multiple threats that you all know around the world, and I mean around the world. We can't answer those threats without people. And we can't retain those people if they don't feel valued and that they don't have some freedom to even write to your mom and dad. And you have to refer them in pronouns. That's, I don't know, there's a lot of people served here. I think that's nonsense. I think I'm at a point in time where the timekeeper is about to give me the hook. So I hope there are no questions, because when I was in the Rotary, I wanted to go home or back to my office on a Friday afternoon. I see one. Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
this is pretty much a comment. I appreciate you being an advocate for the veterans. I know it's not easy to get things done, especially probably in California. It makes it a little bit harder. And I've just watched my dad over the last 10 years doing a VA outpatient clinic in Redding, California, and a veteran cemetery, putting up a chapel, which California doesn't identify as a chapel. But I've watched him over the last 10 years go through all this, and he's been the spearheader for it. It's finally getting completed, but I really appreciate what you're doing, because it's not an easy job.
Thank you. California, the interesting state, you believe it or not, most of the elected officials, and I say most, always stepped up and helped the Guard. They weren't too excited about the Army, the big Army being there. That's the active duty people. They weren't smart enough to realize all the money that comes into California for defense contracts. It's the second largest set of contracts in the whole United States. Only Virginia has more. Now, we could do more in Tennessee, but that's for another time. But we're missing out on a lot of opportunities where all of you that own a business would be registered to do business with the Defense Department and make lots of money or more money. It's not a crime yet to make money. Go ahead, sir.
Sir, thank you for speak. Thank you for everything you've done for our country. My question to you, sir, is out of all the things you've done, what has been the most fulfilling thing that you've been a part of?
Well, as I said, I really couldn't keep a job. I was always moving around within the government system or in the private sector. I'd probably say the best thing, military service. It's not about the money. It's about the relationships you build, you never forget. It's about exercises that you participate in. It's about deployments that you go on. The toughest thing is when you lose friends or family member, and I've done both. So I think the most rewarding thing in my lifetime, I better say this in case any of you talk to my wife, of course, marrying my wife, Brenda, my 3 children, and my military service would be very good. And I won't go into anything else about my military service, but it was very rewarding. If there are no further questions, you guys can all go back to your office or home. Oh, there's another one. Oh, Mr. Andrews.
I've been watching some articles, TV and otherwise, about military and the fact that there might not be as many military personnel because they'll have more drones, they'll have more people sitting behind computers, developing these war situations.
I'm not sure that's a question, but it's just a statement, and it is factual. What is happening with the armed forces, technology has been a great addition. I could go into what they call a van, and these are where the predators are operated, and they're making strikes. And I can watch, if you'll forgive me, ladies and gentlemen, the bad guys get an enema at Mach 2. And that vehicle that we were sitting in was in California. And we're in the Middle East. And we're either blowing up a bridge or blowing up bad guys. And here you are, you're not in a combat zone, but you're actively participating in a combat operation in support of Army or Marines on the ground, or the AWACS personnel telling you where they need to strike. And you're able to do that from so far away. Technology, AI is going to be a big influence, and you'd be really fascinated to see some of the technology. The Navy, there's a gentleman named Eric Verhaeg. He and I used to work together. He is a Rear Admiral, 2-star. Sometimes I mess this up. I think he's called a Rear Admiral upper half, 2-star. An academy graduate, but before that, he was an enlisted sailor. He's in charge of the missile program at the Navy Yard in Washington, D.C. And let me tell you, the Navy is doing fascinating work and research and operational deployments of some missile systems that are incredible. And I think the future of the armed forces, you might be able to do more with less. But one of the problems we have is that 90% of the men and women that we have in this country can't serve. 90% are disqualified before they even go to recruitment office. 90%. So now you have only 10% that can serve. And of that 10%, only 1% will serve. So we're having a hard time meeting what we call end strength, the number of people we need each year. We have made end strength this year, but I'll tell you, from being in recruiting, we used to always call people ghosts. We knew people were getting out and they were going to separate in the next 6 months. At the end of the year, what we call to meet end strength, we would say, oh yeah, they're still on the books, knowing full well that they were going to be gone and we still hadn't recruited behind them to fill. Now that's even harder. We had a goal, meaning what you have to do every month, of 5.5 people. Now that goal is 1 or 2, and they can't find them. It's really hard to find both the enlisted personnel that you need, the Warrant Officer Corps, which primarily in the Army side flies helicopters. The Air Force and the Space Force are just bringing warrant officers back. They disappeared, the last one, I believe, in about 1980. Navy still has them. These are for technical experts, who generally occupy these positions, so do the Marines, and our Officer Corps. They come from the Academy or ROTC, some direct appointments who are professionals like doctors and lawyers, dentists, and direct commissions. Sometimes they're awarded to those folks. And then we have what we call Officer Candidate School. All of those have shortages. So if you know somebody that would like to serve, see Ray. He'll get a little ribbon if he recommends somebody to enlist. So we'd like you to get the ribbon. I don't need any more. It just costs you more money to put on your uniform. Anything else? Oh, another one.
You mentioned you mentioned a percent, 90% are not qualified. Did I
Yes,
hear
sir.
that correctly?
Yes, sir.
What would be the couple, 3 biggest reasons they're unqualified?
Thank you for the questions. The question is, I mentioned how many people are not qualified, and I said 90% of America's kids age 18 to 26 are not qualified. 90%. Okay. Drugs. More drugs are used, and we have a limit. So a young woman or man sits down and we're screening them, and we say, do you ever use marijuana? Oh yeah. Yeah. Are you an experimenter? Yes. Well, how many times did you experiment? 3 years. 3 years. That's a user. You're disqualified. That's that. And then all the other drugs that marijuana may or may not be, depending on your release, the stair-stepping drugs. So they're disqualified. Now, marijuana isn't illegal on state levels in many states, but federally, it's still an issue. The second issue is felonies. Kids make mistakes, do wrong things, and the judges don't send people to the military anymore when they say, hey, you can go in the military or you can go to corrections or jail. That's not happening. So if you've got crimes, drug, then number 3, which is popping up, emotional issues, depression, all these things, they are They're the three greatest barriers. And then non-US citizens. Believe it or not, we have had a recruiting office in city of Mexico, or Mexico City for years on the active duty side, and that might shock you, but that's true. And so we have many foreign nationals serving in today's armed forces, and they're earning citizenship through that way. And I know many of you may have a different view of that, but earned citizenship to me seems like the way to go. Many of your parents and grandparents earned their citizenship in World War II, the Civil War, what have you, earned citizenship as they were moving into the country through Ellis Island. Anything else? Does that answer your question, sir? Yes, sir.
I apologize. Did you mention just extremely poor physical fitness as one of the disqualifiers? Because that's a problem, right? We got a lot of young.
No, I was
kids who
gonna leave out the obvious, because as you can see,
No.
a guy like me is no longer physically
No,
qualified.
at your age, at our age, we're prosperous, right? There's a difference.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, when
so.
you're young, it's different. When you're mature, you're prosperous, right? So anyway, these kids, isn't it great that in the future, all they have to do is sit and play video games anyway, right? So they don't need to be physically.
Pretty much. But yes, you're right. Wait though. What is going on right now with the Navy recruiters, the Army recruiters, the Guard recruiters, Air Force, everybody? They're taking a person. Now let me, I don't want to offend anybody because I'm one of these people. They call it the Fat Boy program. That's the rude and crude term for it, as my wife says. So you go to see a recruiter, you want to join up, but you're 10 pounds over. So every weekend you're out doing PT with these guys and these ladies that are recruiters, which are now required to do all this PT. They get you through the program. The Army has a program now where they take you on board and they work on your weight, get it down, and then enlist you. And once these kids, most of them, get into a regular PT program, push-ups, sit-ups, running 5, 6, 7 miles, if you can do that, you'll be fine. But as on the face of it, we are only 10% ready. And that's a problem if we had to surge to get people in to defend against China's invasion of Taiwan or something happening with the Iran mess, and North Korea. Those are the big threat conditions. We don't know exactly what's going on with Russia, but, they still have nukes in a large number. Korea developed a nuclear program. Yes. Well, that's just the age range that I'm referring to that isn't qualified, but there is an age limit. But you'd have to ask your specific recruiter. It would depend on what your occupation was. The Navy, for instance, and the Coast Guard take engineers, civil engineers, and they give them direct commissions now. Why do they do that? Because they really need them. They send them to what my friends in the Navy call forks and spoons. It's basically, I guess they teach them how to put their pants on, how to salute, where these ribbons go that you will eventually earn, where your name tag goes, a little bit of Navy history, and bang, they're out doing civil engineering work, which is desperately needed. So typical age ranges that you see now is from 17 with parental consent all the way up to 29, I think, which is way different than the Stone Age when I enlisted in 1979. Yes, sir.
I was going to ask you, when you mentioned about recruiting, of course, this was many years ago, but when I was in high school, it was regular that the Marines, the Army, Navy, the Air Force came to school and recruited in high school. Do the high schools still allow that?
Well, I don't know if I should admit this in this crowd, but I did go to Harvard, and Harvard wouldn't let them have ROTC. On the high school campuses, some of the districts have policies where we recruiters go on the high school grounds. And it just depends. I don't think you see that in Tennessee. This is a very patriotic state. Even though you might have your differences in the school districts, this is about what things are going to look like and what materials they're looking at. I haven't heard of a recruiter being blocked from coming into the campus in Williamson County. I don't know anything about what's going on in Nashville, but I imagine I would probably hear it because ever since we started this operation, we have heard every complaint known to man and country about what's going on And we're trying to stay in our box, siloed, if you will, and focusing on some benefit improvement. Sometimes we get decorations that, as many of you know, you got out, you just wanted out, you didn't stay around to get your medal. Thank you appreciate it. The Navy guy has us on time. Thank you, sir. All right. May that conclude my comments, please? Thank you all. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tom. I appreciate it. We'd like to give you a pen to say thank you for coming speaking to us. And this isn't for you to read. We read this to first graders. And if you can sign it right here, we really appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
With that, Tim?
But yeah, or with any pen, doesn't matter.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, you just go do it over there. All right. Thank you very much. We want to welcome the guests that did not come today. Appreciate that. Don't forget to stack the chairs in 8, not against the walls, and help put everything up. And we really appreciate it. You all have a great weekend. Yes, Tom, hold on. Yes. Y'all have a good weekend.